I have been married to my husband for 12 years, and we have 2 children. Not sure if I'm overreacting here, but I think my husband is deliberately sabotaging my cooking, and it's starting to feel like some kind of psychological warfare. A bit of background. Sorry if this is long, but context matters. I left my job as an office manager when our son was born to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband works rotating shifts at a local factory, which means sometimes he's on days, sometimes nights, and our family schedule is pretty chaotic. About 3 years ago, my MIL moved in with us after retiring. She claimed she couldn't afford to live alone anymore, which is weird considering she has decent savings. Since leaving my job, cooking has become my main creative outlet. I'm not claiming to be, but I put genuine effort into making homemade meals despite our crazy schedule. Especially when my husband requests specific dishes, which he does pretty often. Last night was my husband's birthday, and he had been asking for my homemade lasagna for weeks. This isn't just any lasagna. I spent over 3 hours preparing this meal, while also helping the kids with homework and doing laundry, because apparently the house doesn't clean itself. When we all sat down at the table, I was feeling pretty good about how everything turned out. The lasagna looked perfect. Before taking a single bite, my husband got up and went to the refrigerator. I thought maybe he was getting Parmesan cheese or something, but no. He came back with a jar of marshmallow fluff and a bottle of hot sauce. I watched as he added marshmallow fluff on top of his lasagna slice and then poured hot sauce on it. The kids were staring, and I was shocked. When I asked what he was doing, in a much nicer way, I promise, he just laughed and said he was improving the flavor. Without even trying a single bite of the original dish I had prepared all afternoon. Our son thought this was hilarious and immediately asked if he could fix his food too. Meanwhile, my Mael just sighed and muttered something about everyone having different tastes. Thanks for the support. The worst part was when my husband pulled out his phone to take a photo of his creation. He carefully arranged the plate and made some joke about saving another bland dinner. I felt my chest tighten as I watched him tapping away on his phone, probably sharing it with his friends. I very quietly mentioned that I had spent hours making this meal exactly the way he requested it for his birthday. His response? An eye roll and telling me I was being too sensitive and that it was just food. My Mael immediately jumped in to tell me I was overreacting and that I shouldn't take cooking so seriously since it's just a hobby. A quick note. Many commenters pointed out that this type of dismissive behavior rarely stays confined to just one area of a relationship, and they were absolutely right. This extends to so many other aspects of our marriage that I hadn't fully connected until reading your responses. This isn't a one-time thing. It's become a pattern over the past year or so. Anytime I make something special, he does this. Christmas dinner, covered in peanut butter. Anniversary salmon, drowned in maple syrup. My birthday pasta, sprinkled with crushed Oreos. It's gotten to the point where I dread cooking anything beyond basic meals because I know he's going to ruin it. After dinner, I excused myself to our bedroom because I honestly couldn't hold back tears anymore. I just sat there crying, feeling completely unappreciated and disrespected. It's not just about the food, although that's part of it. It's about the complete dismissal of my time and effort. Later, my husband found me upset, and instead of apologizing, he told me I was being unreasonable about something as trivial as food. He actually said, "It's not like you're a real chef or anything." That one stung, not gonna lie. This morning was the final straw. I was making breakfast when I noticed he'd shared photos of his improved lasagna on social media with the caption, "Had to fix the wife's cooking again," with laughing emojis. Several of his friends had commented things like savage and rip her cooking skills, which made me feel even worse. I know this might seem like a small thing to most people. It's just food, right? But when cooking is the one thing that gives me a sense of purpose and satisfaction outside of being a mom, having it consistently undermined feels deliberately cruel. He is taking something I care about and publicly mocking it. My Mael isn't helping either. She keeps telling me that I'm being overly critical about my cooking and that I need to relax. She started encouraging my daughter to vary her food too, and now my 6-year-old wants to put syrup on everything because it's funny. I feel like I'm going crazy. Is deliberately ruining someone's cooking as a joke normal behavior? Or am I missing something? I'm starting to wonder if I should just stop cooking altogether and let them fend for themselves with cereal and sandwiches. Now for the first update. First of all, thank you all so much for the overwhelming support on my last post. As many of you suggested, I decided to have a calm conversation with my husband about his food improvements and how they were affecting me. It's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. I honestly didn't expect so many people to validate my feelings about this situation. Reading through all your responses made me realize I wasn't crazy or overly sensitive for being upset about my husband ruining my cooking. So many of you pointed out that this wasn't actually about the food at all, but about respect and appreciation for my time and effort. After reading all your comments and suggestions, I decided to take the advice most of you gave, to have a direct conversation with my husband about how his behavior was making me feel. I waited until my MIL had a doctor's appointment so we could talk without her input or commentary. The conversation initially went better than I expected. I explained calmly how much time and effort I put into cooking for our family, especially the special meals he requests, and how his deliberate alterations before trying them made me feel personally rejected. I also mentioned how humiliating it was to have him post pictures of my fixed meals online for his friends to mock. To my surprise, he actually seemed to hear me. He apologized and admitted he hadn't realized how much it hurt me. He promised to stop adding strange ingredients to my cooking and said he'd delete the social media posts. He even gave me a hug and thanked me for talking to him about it instead of just getting mad, which, okay, slightly condescending, but I was willing to take the win. For almost 2 weeks, things were actually going well. Meals were normal. He complimented my cooking a few times, and I started to feel hopeful that maybe we'd resolve the issue. I even made his favorite lasagna again last weekend, and he ate it without any improvements. Though I noticed he did add a bit more salt when he thought I wasn't looking. But whatever, that's normal. Yesterday was my Miles' birthday, and I wanted to make it special despite our tense relationship. I decided to prepare her favorite meal, a roast chicken with sides. I spent the day in the kitchen making everything from scratch. Homemade stuffing with herbs from our garden, roasted vegetables, gravy, fresh dinner rolls, and even a lemon meringue pie for dessert. The timing had to be perfect to get everything on the table hot, and I was proud of how it all turned out. I brought the dishes to the table and caught my husband giving our 6-year-old daughter a wink. I tried to ignore it and focus on serving everyone. Just as I was about to carve the chicken, my husband announced he had a surprise and pulled out a container of gummy bears and a jar of pickle relish from behind his chair. I froze as I watched him distribute gummy bears to both children, encouraging them to enhance their food. He was grinning at me across the table the entire time, daring me to say something, which, considering our conversation, felt like a deliberate provocation. When I just stood there, my Mael laughed and said, "Don't look so horrified, dear. It's just a bit of fun. You take everything so seriously." To answer some questions many of you asked in my previous post, yes, she always takes his side. And no, she's never shown any appreciation for my cooking despite living in our home for 3 years. My hands were shaking as I put down the serving utensils. I watched in silence as my meal, that I'd spent hours on, was covered in candy and relish by my children. My daughter was putting gummy bears on her chicken, while my son, who initially seemed hesitant, eventually joined in after his dad kept encouraging him. I quietly asked my husband why he would do this after our conversation, trying to keep my voice steady so the kids wouldn't notice how upset I was. He smirked, yes, actually smirked, and said, "The kids love it. Mom thinks it's funny. You're the only one making this a problem." The entire meal descended into chaos. The children started experimenting with other condiments, running to the refrigerator to find more things to add to their plates. My husband and MIL kept exchanging glances, as if they were sharing some private joke at my expense, which I'm pretty sure they were. I barely touched my food, feeling completely deflated and honestly betrayed. After dinner, while I was cleaning up the kitchen, my MIL pulled me aside for what she called a heart-to-heart, which always means she's about to criticize me. She suggested that I should lighten up and that my perfectionism with food was making family meals tense. According to her, I was taking all the joy out of eating by being so rigid about how food should be consumed. Apparently, wanting people to eat my carefully prepared meals without covering them in candy is rigid now. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I went downstairs to get some water and overheard my husband and Miel laughing in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway when I heard my name. My Miel was telling my husband that I was too high maintenance and makes everything dramatic. My husband agreed, adding that he didn't understand why I couldn't take a joke and that I was sucking all the fun out of the house with my food rules. For context, we don't have food rules beyond basic table manners. I quietly went back upstairs, called my sister, and broke down explaining the whole situation. I hadn't realized until that moment how much this was affecting me. It wasn't just about the food. It was about the constant dismissal of my feelings, the way they were ganging up on me, and how they were teaching our children that disrespecting me was funny. My sister pointed out something I hadn't fully connected. This was part of a pattern of my husband deliberately undermining me and then making me feel irrational for being upset. She asked if this behavior extended to other areas of our relationship, and as I thought about it, I realized it did. Thanks to several commenters who pointed this out too, you were right. To answer the most common questions from my first post, 1. No, my husband wasn't always like this. The food improvements started about a year ago, around the same time he got promoted at work. 2. Yes, I've tried making dishes he specifically requests, and he still ruins them. 3. No, I'm not a terrible cook. I actually used to cater small events before having kids. 4. Yes, I've considered therapy, both individually and as a couple. 5. No, my Miel doesn't pay rent or contribute financially, something else many of you pointed out as problematic. Sorry for the lengthy update. I wanted to include all the relevant details since so many of you asked for them. I'm still trying to figure out what to do next. This morning, my husband acted like nothing had happened, but I can't just pretend everything is fine. I'm seriously considering taking the kids to my sister's for a few days, just to get some perspective, and honestly, a break from the constant undermining. Part of me wonders if I'm making too big a deal out of this, but another part knows this isn't normal or healthy behavior. The way my husband deliberately violated our agreement and turned our children against me over something as basic as respecting my cooking feels calculated in a way that scares me. I'll update again when I figure out my next steps. Thank you all again for helping me see this situation more clearly. Your support has been genuinely life-changing. Now for the second update. Update 2. Thank you all for the support on my previous posts about my husband's food improvements. Original post got locked, but update number 1 is still up. I'm overwhelmed by how many of you recognize this behavior as more than just food jokes. It's been about 2 weeks since my last update, and I've been taking your advice. So many of you suggested I document what's happening, which honestly hadn't even occurred to me before. I guess I was too busy doubting myself. I started keeping a small notebook in the kitchen drawer, jotting down dates and details whenever my husband improved my cooking. At first, I felt ridiculous. I was overreacting by writing it all down, but seeing the pattern on paper made everything much clearer. Despite his promise to stop, my husband has gone right back to fixing even basic weekday meals. Last Tuesday, I made a simple chicken and rice casserole, and he covered it with maple syrup before taking a bite. When I reminded him of our conversation, he just shrugged and said, "I thought you were only upset about the special meals. This is just regular dinner." What really got to me was discovering that this wasn't just about the food itself. While looking for a photo on his phone last weekend, he asked me to find a picture of our water heater to send to the plumber. I accidentally opened his gallery and saw an album titled Food Fixes. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There were dozens of pictures, not just recent ones, but going back nearly a year. Each photo showed one of my ruined meals with captions like, "Saved dinner again," and "Wife thinks she's a chef, lol." Some had comment threads where his friends were laughing along. I felt physically sick scrolling through it. Meanwhile, my Miel has been actively encouraging the kids to be creative with their food like Daddy. Yesterday morning, she gave my daughter chocolate chips to put on her scrambled eggs, telling her it was more fun that way. When I objected, she rolled her eyes and criticized my food rules. For the record, my food rules are basically just try it before you decide you don't like it, and don't play with your food at the table. After documenting this pattern for almost 2 weeks, I decided I needed to try a different approach. Many commenters suggested I stop putting so much effort into cooking until my work was respected. Thanks especially to Recipe Respecter, who pointed out I was wasting my effort. So yesterday, when my husband texted asking if I was making the pot roast he'd requested for dinner, I simply replied, no, change of plans. When he got home from his overnight shift, he found me preparing simple sandwiches instead of the elaborate meal he'd been expecting. Just basic turkey and cheese sandwiches with some carrot sticks and apple slices on the side. What's this? He asked, looking confused. Where's the pot roast? I explained calmly that I'd decided there was no point in spending hours on meals that would be deliberately ruined with inappropriate condiments. I told him when he could respect the food as prepared, I'd go back to making special meals. His face darkened immediately. So you're punishing everyone because you can't tolerate jokes about your cooking? That's so passive-aggressive. I maintained my composure, which was not easy, and explained that my cooking represented hours of work and emotional investment that he consistently dismissed as worthless. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was simply matching my effort to the level of appreciation shown. That's when my Mael walked in and immediately took his side. Oh, for heaven's sake, are we still talking about the food thing? You're being childish and manipulative, she told me while patting her son's shoulder sympathetically. My husband spotted my food journal on the counter and grabbed it before I could stop him. He started reading entries aloud in a mocking, high-pitched voice that was apparently supposed to sound like me. April 12th, husband added chocolate syrup to my beef stew. I felt disrespected and hurt. April 15th, MIL encouraged daughter to put gummy bears in her spaghetti. I felt undermined as a parent. He looked at his mother and laughed. Oh my God, listen to how dramatic she is. When I tried to take back my journal, he held it out of reach. I'm 5'4", he's 6'1". Real mature move on his part. See how crazy she's being, he said to his mother. She's actually documenting every time I put sauce on my food. Who does that? I didn't realize our son had come into the kitchen until he spoke up. Why are you being mean to Mom's cooking? He asked, looking confused. I like her food the normal way. The look on my husband's face changed instantly. He lowered the journal and switched to his good dad voice. Nobody's being mean, buddy. Daddy and Mommy are just having a grown-up discussion. I'm just playing a fun game with food. Mommy's being a little too sensitive, that's all. I wanted to say something, but I honestly couldn't trust myself to speak without crying at that point. I just took the sandwiches to the table and called the kids for dinner. My husband added hot sauce and peanut butter to his sandwich before taking a bite. He kept looking at me expectantly, waiting for a reaction, but I just kept eating and talking to the kids about their day at school. That night, after the kids were in bed, I was heading to the bathroom when I overheard my L in my husband's office. The door was slightly ajar, and I could clearly hear her saying, "She's using food to control the family. Classic manipulation tactic. You can't let her get away with it." My husband mumbled something in response that I couldn't make out, and my MIL continued, "Don't let her manipulate you with her tears. Stand your ground." I went back to our bedroom and just sat on the bed, feeling completely defeated. I was seen as the villain for being upset that my husband was purposely ruining food and mocking me for it. The next morning, after my husband left for work and before my MIL woke up, I called my sister. I broke down explaining everything that had happened. She immediately offered to let me and the kids stay with her for a few days to get some perspective. "This isn't normal," she kept saying. "This is emotional abuse, and they're gaslighting you." I packed bags for myself and the kids while my Mael was still asleep. I left a note explaining that I needed space to think and that the constant dismissal of my feelings had become too much to handle. I wrote that I'd be in touch about the kids' schedules, but needed a break from the household dynamic. I checked my phone about 10 times on the drive to my sister's, expecting angry calls or texts, but there was nothing. Complete silence. I don't know if that's better or worse than the conflict I was expecting. I'll try to respond to comments, but I'm helping my sister with her foster puppies while processing all this, so might be slow. I'm overwhelmed by all of this. I feel that my husband and Mael are acting like villains, and I'm being overly emotional. More updates to come, unfortunately. Now for the final update. Final update on my husband ruining my cooking and my marriage. First of all, thank you all for the incredible support on my previous posts. I genuinely didn't expect thousands of comments and messages rip my ability to respond to everyone individually. For those asking if I'm okay after disappearing for 2 weeks, I am. And here's what happened after I left with the kids. It's been just over 3 weeks since I packed up the kids and headed to my sister's place. Those first few days were honestly a blur of emotions. Crying, sleeping, more crying, repeat. My sister was amazing through all of it, not just letting us stay, but helping with the kids while I dealt with the emotional breakdown I'd been suppressing for months. The puppies also kept the kids busy, which helped me smile a bit. My husband's reaction to us leaving was complicated. The first day was complete silence, which honestly hurt more than angry texts would have. Then came the flood, alternating between apologetic, "I miss you" messages and accusatory, "How could you abandon our family" guilt trips, sometimes within the same hour. He'd send a heartfelt paragraph about how sorry he was, then follow it up 20 minutes later saying I was destroying our family over some jokes and asking if I was really this petty. The irony of him calling me petty was not lost on me. Meanwhile, my Mael was blowing up my phone daily. According to her, I was mentally unstable, manipulative, and tearing apart a family over food. She conveniently ignored all the gaslighting and mockery. She even called my sister directly when I stopped responding, telling her I needed professional help for my food obsession. My sister, bless her, told her exactly where she could stick that opinion. After about a week of this, my sister sat me down and laid it out for me. "This isn't about food," she said. "This is about him systematically making you feel crazy for having feelings, then using those reactions to further prove you're unstable. It's textbook emotional abuse." She showed me some articles about gaslighting and emotional manipulation, and I felt a deep sense of realization. The kids were getting confused about why we weren't going home. My daughter was fine. She was loving puppy vacation at Auntie's house. But my son kept asking questions I didn't have good answers for. "Is Dad sorry for being mean about your cooking? When are we going home? Are you and Dad getting divorced?" That last one caught me completely because I honestly didn't know the answer. After 10 days at my sister's, I decided I needed to have a real conversation with my husband. Not over text where he could carefully craft his responses, but face to face where I could see his genuine reactions. My sister immediately offered to come with me. She didn't trust him not to manipulate me if I went alone, and we arranged for her neighbor to watch the kids. We drove to my house on Saturday afternoon. I was expecting to find my husband alone, maybe with my Mael, but instead, there were several cars in the driveway. I felt anxious. Was he having a party while his family was gone? As we walked up to the front door, I could hear laughter inside. I still had my key, so I unlocked the door and walked in to find my husband sitting in our living room with 5 people from his work, including his supervisor, Dave, who I'd met at company picnics. They were all gathered around his phone, and my husband was mid-sentence. And then she wrote about how disrespected she felt when I put hot sauce on my dinner. I mean, who does that? The group was laughing, except for one older woman who looked uncomfortable. My husband didn't see us at first, continuing, "She's so uptight about her cooking. Look at this one." He swiped to another picture in his Food Fixes album. "This was when I put maple syrup on that casserole. She nearly had a breakdown." My sister immediately started recording with her phone. When my husband finally noticed us standing there, his expression changed quickly. The room went completely silent. The older woman broke the tension by simply saying, "That's actually pretty mean if she spent hours cooking that for you. Janet, if you're somehow reading this, thank you. Seriously." My husband stood up. "What the hell? Are you spying on me now?" Real mature, trying to ambush me in front of my coworkers. My Mael appeared from the kitchen. When she saw me, she froze, then immediately shifted into damage control mode. "Oh, look who decided to come home. Everyone, this is my daughter-in-law who's been taking some space. She's been going through a rough patch, emotionally. She just doesn't understand men's humor sometimes." I felt surprisingly calm as I addressed her directly. "Actually, why don't you show everyone those text messages you sent calling me emotionally unstable and manipulative because I was upset about being mocked? I'm sure they'd find those hilarious too." I then looked around the room at his colleagues. For the past year, my husband has deliberately ruined meals I spend hours preparing, specifically the ones he requests. When I get upset, he tells me I'm crazy and too sensitive. This isn't about food, it's about respect. The silence that followed was very uncomfortable. Dave, my husband's supervisor, stood up and gathered his jacket. "I think we should go. Thanks for the beers, but yeah." He paused at the door and looked directly at my husband. We need to talk about professionalism on Monday. The look he gave my husband said everything. After everyone filed out, my husband absolutely exploded. Are you happy now? You just humiliated me in front of my boss. This is my career you're messing with. All because you can't take a joke about your precious cooking. My sister, still recording, just said, "Keep going. This is all great evidence for the divorce attorney." That stopped him. He hadn't realized she was recording the whole thing. My MIL announced she'd be staying with my husband's sister for a while, since she couldn't handle the situation I had created. She packed a bag while muttering about how I destroyed the family with my overreactions. Honestly, her leaving was the first bit of good news I'd had in weeks. Once we were alone, something unexpected happened. My husband broke down. He admitted that he'd started the food improvements because he was jealous. Apparently, he resented how much praise I got for my cooking from his friends and family. What started as a way to get attention and laughs evolved into a pattern he couldn't stop, especially when his friends started looking forward to his food pictures. "I know it sounds pathetic," he said, "but when everyone laughed, I felt important. I wanted to be seen as funny instead of just the guy married to the cook." I told him I needed time to decide if our marriage could be repaired. The food was never actually the issue. It was the gaslighting, the mockery, the way he'd made me question my own sanity for having feelings. I made it clear that rebuilding trust would require serious effort on his part, including therapy, both individual and couples. That was 2 weeks ago. We're still living separately, me and the kids at my sister's, him at our house. He started therapy and sent me a long, seemingly heartfelt letter acknowledging the emotional abuse and gaslighting without making excuses. My MIL is still at my sister-in-law's and apparently bad-mouthing me to anyone who'll listen, though surprisingly, several family members have reached out to say they're on my side after hearing what actually happened. I don't know what the future holds for us. Part of me wants to believe he can change with proper therapy and accountability. Another part wonders if the trust can ever be fully rebuilt. For now, I'm taking things day by day and focusing on creating a stable environment for my kids, who are handling this better than expected. Though my son still has questions I struggle to answer. Edit. Rip my inbox. So many of you have asked if I've been cooking again. The answer is yes, but it's different now. My sister and I have been cooking together, and it's become less about perfection and more about enjoyment. Last night we made lasagna with the kids helping, and when my daughter accidentally spilled extra oregano into the sauce, we all just laughed and called it chef's special seasoning. No one took pictures, no one mocked anyone, we just ate good food together. It helped me feel better. I never thought my marriage would be in trouble because of food jokes, but here we are. Thank you all for helping me realize I wasn't crazy or overreacting. Your support literally changed my life.